All right, welcome to Starting Nine here on the Five Reasons YouTube channel. I'm Ethan Skolnick, joining you on a Wednesday morning, doing 8 o'clock tonight, or today. Our producer is Maddie Chang, and you can follow our work here at the Five Reasons YouTube channel. Make sure you hit like and subscribe. Also, check out the podcast feeds. Just did an episode last night after the Heat lose in Toronto, not really even competitive. Get it down to 10 with about 2.5 minutes left, missed 4 shots on 1 possession. Gave up the layup on the other end, and that was the end of it. We're going to talk about that and the Heat and really why they don't have any resolve this season, because I feel like we're beating dead horses here, but it's just not good enough. So we're going to get into why and how they fix this, or even if they care to fix it in the last 6 games. Do want to mention 2 sponsors here on the Five Reasons YouTube channel. We always mention Prize Picks. Use the code 5, F-I-V-E. Get that initial deposit matched up to $100. It's just rated the #1 fastest growing sports product in the country. Find out why, and make sure you make your picks. Yesterday, I suggested Bam and Siakam over. Put it on Twitter and everything and didn't play it. Would have made $50 last night. You can make money, too. Use the code 5, F-I-V-E. Again, get that initial deposit matched up to $100. You can play all the sports, too, not just the NBA. NCAA tournament coming up on Saturday. Final 4 with FAU and Miami. We'll be doing Prize Pick shows in advance of that. Also, our friends over at All Pro Construction Builders. You can find them now at allproconstructionbuilders.com or at their Instagram, which is the same. Manny put it up for us there, All Pro Construction Builders. Basically, you need your hurricane windows, okay? You got to take care of those now. It's March. I feel like we just had our first rain in about 4 months, but you know it's coming, and you don't want to be waiting until the last minute. And you also want to get the 5 Reasons discount. That's 10%. So reach out to Danny and his crew. Danny's a huge Miami Heat fan as well. He's frustrated like all of you are. 305-484-4429. That's 305-484-4429. That's All Pro Construction Builders. All right, let's get to it. The Miami Heat lose to Toronto. They played the Knicks tonight. This game should have had real meaning tonight, okay? You win the game against the Nets where you were leading, and then all of a sudden got blown out 31-6 in the third quarter. You win last night. You win even one of those 2 games. We're having a conversation about how the Heat can possibly catch the Knicks for 5. They can't now. It's not going to happen. This is all about the 6th spot. It's all about the Nets at this stage. It's all about staying out of the play-in. They say they don't want to be a play-in team, and they don't play like it. David Arango says complacency, and I want to address that because we talked about that on the post-game show last night, and I'm glad that he mentioned that. We do take your comments here. We always take your super chats as well. I don't understand why this team is complacent. I don't know what they've earned. Like, everybody makes fun of Memphis, right, in the West because they never won anything and they're all cocky and stuff. Well, the Heat are not cocky. Like, they're not cocky like Memphis. They don't act like Dylan Brooks or John Morant. They don't have any of that kind of swagger, so to speak. But they're, like, cocky in the sense that they thought they could just throw the balls out this season and everything would be fine. And maybe that started with the front office and this idea of running it back. And I know we've had disputes about whether they did run it back or didn't run it back and what they tried to do. But the team, and Gabe Vincent gave me this quote about a week and a half ago, and I keep saying it because it perfectly encapsulated what's gone on this season. He said, we've been living in last year. We've been living in last year. Media's been living in last year. Everybody's been living in last year. The fans have been living in last year. That everybody just kind of expected that this team would pick up where they left off because continuity would win out. I know not all fans expected that. I know some fans did not like the idea of running it back. We obviously took many of those comments and questions and all the rest of that before. But it does seem like, in general, the organization, maybe the media, maybe the players, thought that this would go back to how it was. That even if they had a shooting problem in the playoffs, that would normalize and they'd shoot the way they shot over the longer sample size, which was the course of the last regular season, and that just simply hasn't happened. And now you're in a position where the best you can do is 6. I don't even believe they're going to get the 6 at this stage. The Nets schedule is soft the rest of the way. It may come down to whether or not Philadelphia plays its starters against the Nets in the last game of the regular season. Philly may not need to if they're locked into 3, but they could be the 2. And so we see Boston lose last night. They're not playing very well. Philadelphia has a real shot at getting the 2 spot. And so they probably will play their starters in the last game of the season. And if that's the case, then maybe Miami has a chance there with the Nets losing. But I don't trust the Heat to be in anybody. I don't, not right now, because they're so inconsistent. And this all goes back to what David Arango just said here on our comments, that it comes down to complacency. And I don't understand why that is. I don't know why a team that has so many players that had to go the undrafted route and have finally made it, that those guys suddenly relax this year, if that's what happens. Now, I think with most of the undrafted guys, it was more so about hitting their ceilings, okay? But I think them hitting their ceilings has caused frustration with the core group of this team, Jimmy, Bam, Kyle, etc., where that has become a problem. But again, the word complacency is so strange because there's no point to be complacent 76 games into a season where you're only, 4 games over 500. You have a negative net rating. You have a 1-6 record. I'm going to repeat that. You have a 1-6 record against the Raptors and the Bulls. You may play one of those two teams in the play-in. You may play two of those teams, actually, to survive if you lose a 7-8 matchup against, say, Atlanta. And so I don't understand why they're complacent. I don't understand why they go through these stretches where it looks like they just don't care. And then this season, they have managed to care in the last 5 minutes of a lot of games, and Jimmy and Tyler in particular have carried them over the end line. And so that's the only reason their record is not worse than it is. There is fool's gold in them being 4 games over 500. Their net rating suggests they should be 4 games under 500. And the only reason, again, that they are not is because their clutch play has been so good. But last night, they couldn't even get to clutch play because they got it again down to 10. They relaxed the entire third quarter. They got it down to 10. They were bothered by Toronto's length, as they always are. But Toronto had no shooting on the floor last night. Gary Trent feels like he misses every game against the Heat. He is kind of their designated three-point shooter. Van Vliet has been hot from 3 of late, but they're not a good shooting team. And yet Miami, knowing that, and knowing that, okay, we just got to clog the paint. We got to keep them from getting into the paint. Let them get into the paint over and over and over and over. And then committed turnovers that led them to get in the paint in transition. And then also could not turn Toronto over at all. And that's the other thing here. And this is not complacency, but this is a bit of strategy that has backfired on the Heat this year. And Alex has addressed it on 5 on the Floor, is that this was an aggressive defensive team that has become a less aggressive defensive team because they are trying to protect not just Tyler Hero in the starting lineup now, but also Kevin Love. And so they have become a read and react kind of defensive team, and they're on their heels, and the turnovers are not coming, and they're certainly not going to come. And I'm talking about the Heat getting turnovers. They're certainly not going to come with Jimmy Butler out of the lineup. And so you look at Victor Oladipo last night. He was not a defensive menace like he needs to be, considering how erratic he is offensively. But it wasn't just Oladipo. They got nothing out of Love again. They got nothing out of Vincent. And they got really very little out of Bam until garbage time in the fourth quarter. And I think what we've seen here, too, that is frustrating and also telling as we go forward is that I really do like Bam and Tyler as 2 and 3 pieces on a team, or 3 and 2, however you characterize it. Bam is your defensive anchor with Jimmy, and maybe Tyler is more of your offensive anchor with Jimmy. I'm okay with it. But the problem is, what we've definitely seen is, if they have to go into the future with sort of a post-Jimmy build, they are not ready for that. They're not ready for it because they desperately still need Jimmy. And I thought that part of this season was about the torch being passed to Bam and to Tyler, where Jimmy would not be as necessary anymore. But he is. And he is, even on a night where Bam gave you kind of empty numbers, 21, 12, and 4, I believe. And Tyler gave you real numbers. I thought Tyler was good last night. Again, we can talk about defense, but offensively, I'm not going to blame Tyler for taking the large majority of the shots when he was the only one trying to do anything. My issues are come when Tyler kind of tries to do too much in the flow of the offense when they have everybody. But in a situation like that, it's just go get yours. Go get yours and see if you can get you far enough back into the game that somebody else wakes up. Bam woke up, but it was too late. So anyway, I'm glad that David gave us this word today because that really is the word. It's complacency. And I don't understand now as we project forward and you look at 6 games left, starting with New York and then Dallas, which is really struggling coming in here on Saturday, how you can be complacent when essentially you're watching your season evaporate. I mean, you go into the play-in, it is over. And it's probably over if they get the 6 anyway. But I thought at least if they got the 6, even if Philly is hot, you know how volatile the Sixers are. You know that Embiid can get hurt at any time. Harden, you don't know how that's going to play out. Doc can be outcoached in a playoff series. He is over and over and over. Miami had a plan for them last year that worked. They have largely the same personnel. Yes, PJ Tucker is on the other side. I don't think that's that big a factor. Not what Heat fans think. PJ was more important for setting the culture this year. That's over. As far as a player, he's not really giving Philadelphia a whole lot. This comes in from David Rango again. Those undrafted players seem to be in the "you need me" mindset. I don't. Well, they shouldn't be, but I think that they're in the mindset of frustration from having to do things maybe this year they're not capable of doing. Something the organization is creating indirectly with the moves they've made. The organization has seemingly fallen in love with their own clout. Well, I think what they've fallen in love with, I think it's two-pronged. I think it's feeling you can cut corners because you are so advanced in one area, right? So I think the idea is you can cut corners on payroll. You can cut corners maybe a little bit on sort of personnel creativity or putting yourself out there because you can create more undrafted players. There's nothing wrong in having a stocked farm system. The Heat are way in front of everybody else on this. As a developmental organization, they are top 5. You can decide who the other 4 are. I think Toronto's there. I think San Antonio. We're going to see when they come out of this that they are there. There's a couple others. Miami deserves the credit for doing it. I don't have a problem with it. But when it becomes a substitute for players with higher upsides, that's when it becomes a problem. When there's too many on the roster who bump against their ceilings. There's a reason that all the Heat's rookies are like 24, 25 years old. They're going to hit a ceiling at some point. Okay? There are very few undrafted. It's why Udonis Haslem is such an amazing story as an undrafted guy. But undrafted players, yes, there have been success stories. There continue to be success stories. Miami has had plenty of success stories. Look, Anthony Carter's on their coaching staff. He was one of their undrafted guys. You look back at Mike James, Bruce Bowen, Ike Austin through the years. Okay, they have developed. Joel Anthony, again, Udonis. So many of these types of players. Rodney McGruder had a decent run in Miami, still in the league. And even their developmental with kind of borderline guys, like sort of what Dion Waiters had become and James Johnson before the bloated contracts. And, of course, Tyler Johnson and Hassan Whiteside. Okay, again, we have negative memories of a lot of them, but the reality is the Heat helped make them contributors, in some cases significant contributors. Problem is twofold now. One is these players bump up against an upside, no matter what Eric Spoelstra does, that's going to happen. But 2, these players are virtually untradeable because the whole damn league knows that they're going to play better in Miami than they play anywhere else, because that's been the case consistently. You cannot name the undrafted guy or developed guy in Miami that went somewhere else and the Heat regretted letting him go. The player does not exist in this Eric Spoelstra developmental era with Chet Kammerer, Adam Simon, and the others who've done this. Player does not exist. They're all been better in Miami. And that's the decision they're going to have to make now on Strus and Vincent, although they may just pay those 2 guys because, honestly, with the way the cap works out, unless they're extraordinarily creative, they can't really replace them with anybody else. Excuse me. So they might as well just pay them, although it's certainly not as much as they were going to pay them before this season started. So I'm with you about the undrafted thing. I think there is some arrogance there. I don't think there's complacency in terms of developing the players. We saw this year Jamal Cain hasn't contributed a whole lot, but Orlando Robinson did for a period of time. That the developmental program is still working for Miami, but it can't be everything. And ultimately, you're going to be carried based on how your best players play. And when Jimmy's out, this team does not seem to have much of a chance. And that's problematic. And that's, again, even with Tyler Hero playing an elite offensive game yesterday, it still wasn't enough. And as you look into the future, and people are saying you trade Jimmy and get what you can, not unless Jimmy asks out. And I don't think that's happening. To me, if Jimmy's going to play near this level for the next 2 years, you take the 55 to 60 games in the regular season, and you take the fact that he gives you a puncher's chance in a playoff series, and you don't move him for other assets. And that's where we get into the whole conversation again, and we'll have it all summer about, well, who else do you move? And they're not going to move Bam. And so then we start talking about Tyler again. And that seems unfair after last night because, again, he was excellent. He got to his spots. He made his tough shots. I thought he handled reasonably well last night. But this team has seemed to have hit its own ceiling. So anyway, we're going to cover it over the next couple of days. Thanks to those of you who checked in this morning. We'll just do these from time to time here. I'm going to mention All-Pro Construction Builders, also Prize Picks, use code 5, FIVE. Check out Playback tonight. We're going to be on Playback tonight. Again, we had a big crowd there last night. We had 7 hosts. We had more than 70 people popping in and out of there. So this is great. You just get the stream. and you can watch the game with us, and then we just end up talking about just about anything. I'll be on there tonight a little more consistently than I was last night, and we'll have others here from the network. But as we look forward, we are trying to care about something right now that I'm not sure the team we're covering cares about all that much. That's what I got out of that second half against the Nets and that game in Toronto. Under those circumstances, have a good day, everybody.